Hi, I'm Mark Wilson, the Engineering Heretic, and today I'm going to look at this particular tool here, a Vernier Caliper. This one here will measure up to about 200 millimeters. It's metric and imperial, but I'm only going to deal with the metric scale here. The standard in Australia is metric. I do occasionally use the imperial one, but pretty much I stick to metric anyway. So we'll only talk about the metric scale. Now this is called a Vernier calipers. They're calipers, but the Vernier bit is actually to do with this particular scale here. That particular scale there is a Vernier scale. Now if I close this, check my jaws here, make sure they're nice and clean, close that all the way. I'll see if I can avoid parallax error with the camera. I'll close up all the way. If I close that all the way here, we'll look at the scale here. It says here that this particular scale reads down to 0.02 of a millimeter. Look here, this is on 0 at the moment. And if I look up the scale, you'll see there's 0.0, there's 0.1, 0.2, but everything you see up this scale here, gradually as we're working our way up here, is a shift slightly to the left here until we get to the halfway or the 5 there. We'll see that we're exactly half a millimeter away from between each graduation there. So by looking across this Vernier scale and seeing what lines up with the standard 1 millimeter scale here, because each one of these graduations is 0.02 less of 1 millimeter, hence the reason why there's this slight shift all the way up to the end here. You'll see at the end here at the 49 millimeter mark, it's shifted across 1 full millimeter exactly. So it's a matter of looking across here. So if I move this out a little bit, we'll just lock this up. I'll check this out. Now it might be a little bit hard to read with the camera, but you'll have to take my word for it. I see I have 2 millimeters there. That's before. So we're a little bit past 2 millimeters. You can see here, there's the 2 millimeter mark right there. We're around about a half mil past that, but if we line up here with the Vernier scale, we'll see that I believe the best lined up one there would be probably this particular line here, one graduation past the half mil. So that will be 2.5, and there's the 0.2 for each one of these ones represents 0.2 of a millimeter. So that it will be 2.52 millimeters. Now, to be perfectly honest, I never measure with one of these tools down to that level. I normally go down to around about 0.1, and everything else I use a micrometer. Okay? You can, and I do sometimes, use this down to higher tolerances than that, but normally I just read it across on the 0.1. Quite often, you're on a lathe, you're roughing something down. You don't need to measure down to the exact size. You just want something that'll tell you whether it's a half mil up or whatever. And you just generally glance at whatever the 0.1s are and just line up the closest one. And if it's halfway between the 5 or the 6, well, you'll know it's an 0.5. But you don't need to read this down to that fine tolerance all the time. But these calipers are quite quick at reading, and you don't tend to make too many errors very quickly with this. You can see the graduations quite easily just there. Sometimes I just read it to the 0 line. I'll see that's basically 2.5 mil. Read it that way. Sometimes I read it a little bit closer to the 0.1s. Sometimes, occasionally, I read it down to 0.2, but only very rarely. I normally use a mic for that. Now, there are different types of calipers. There are digital ones. They're pretty self-explanatory how they read. There are also a dial one. I do have a dial one. This is a dial one. They read off in 0.5s. That's the finest one for that. They're pretty straightforward how they read as well. But the only one that's technically a Vernier caliper is this particular variety, because it has a Vernier scale. So it is technically a Vernier caliper. This is a dial caliper, And of course the digital ones are a digital caliper. There are a number of ways you can measure things with these, and that's the beauty about this tool. You can measure external things. Usually if you're going to measure a drill, I usually hold it around about something like that, measure across the tip there, measure that particular size there. Just quickly I get 10.5 millimeters is that size of that drill. You can measure internal sizes with those jaws there, kind of the reverse of these ones. You can also measure a step with this particular end point here. And there's also like a hole or another step mechanism at the back here that will measure the length of holes and things like that, deep slots and stuff like that. They're quick to use, and particularly these vernier ones, if you were a fitter or something like that and you had to have a go-to measuring piece of equipment, you would probably have one of these in your toolbox rather than a digital one or a dial one, because the batteries never go flat, the digital ones do. They're quite delicate. These are, well, you've got to look after them, keep them in their pouch, make sure they're protected from other tools, and they will sit in your toolbox for many, many years and basically never wear out, and you'll have every time you need it. So that's a Vernier caliper. You can actually do finer adjustments than that. You can use this lock here and adjust things up finely. Sometimes I've even taken a size there and mic'd across the jaws, sometimes on bores and things like that. What you can do is use this a bit like a gauge, lock this up here, twiddle that and find the exact size there and actually mic across the jaws there and use it like a gauge or something like that, rather than actually take sizes off there. So that is a Vernier caliper, and I'm Mark Wilson, and thanks for watching.